Hi, welcome to the first session of our keyboard playing. Ensure that before you move on into these sessions, ensure that you have already covered music theory lesson 1 and lesson 2, which actually gives you the basic understanding as to the next few sessions that we're going to cover. Sorry. So for the first lesson, we're going to explore into keyboard chords playing and also finger positioning. So before when you're starting out, you're probably struggling to play chords like like you find it very difficult to having to play with both hands at the same time, looking at chord sheets and even following metronome or tempo lah. So I just want to encourage you guys that it's perfectly normal, that you're not abnormal, and actually the way to improve, the way to get better at this is really by working on every single one of these components, be it familiarizing with the chords, or actually also working on your fingerings, which actually helps you to move between chords, as well as practicing with metronome, which actually gets you there. So yeah, so now let's proceed to the first thing that we're going to cover, which is going to be finger positioning. Okay, so for easy demonstration, I'm going to start with the C major chord. The C major chord basically has 3 notes, the C, E, and the G. So all these are already covered in theory lesson 1 and 2, so do refer there if you need to. So why finger positioning? Finger positioning is actually essential in making sure that there is smooth transition between chords and chords to chords. So let me just give you a small illustration, right? So there's a lot of chords that I played here, but maybe just look at the first 2 chords, realize that I played from 1, 3, 5 on the right hand, and I move downward to a 1, 2, 5. And for my left hand, I move from my pinky, I just move it down by 1. So, right? So actually, in terms of how to teach you to change your fingerings, that every chord actually has a unique way of playing them in terms of their fingerings. So it will be very hard to teach you how to play every single chord. So we do follow by some general rules, which I'm going to share with you today. So what do we usually do for a start is usually the number of fingers, 1 to 5. So from here you can see my fingers. So 1 being the thumb and 5 being the pinky. So actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. So there's actually a distinction when you're playing a triad as compared to playing a chord. So triads in music actually represents a set of 3 notes stacked together. So and in thirds apart. So basically 1 third apart from 1 is actually from the C is actually a E, and the third apart from the E is actually a G. So these are what we call triads, 3 notes stacked together, right? So for basic triads, usually what we play, how we usually play it, we play on the left hand, we use a fingering of 1, 5, 3, and 1. And on the right hand, we use a fingering of 1, 3, and 5. So this is a C major triad. However, it's not extensive to all chord shapes when in play, but it generally works for most triads. So just gonna play once through with all the major and minor chords starting from the C. So for you all to see that, right? So this is a C major, and this is a C minor. So it's also 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5. See that? Right, then do the D major, D minor, E major, E minor, F major, F minor, G major, G minor, A major, A minor. Well, now we come to the B. It's actually slightly different. You see my fingerings. This is a B major. Realize that actually I don't use my 1, 3, 5 here. I use my 1, 2, 4 for my right hand. For my left hand, it will be a 5, 3, 2. Okay, so the reason for this is actually simple. It's because as you can see, the D sharp and the F sharp, which are actually the thirds and the fifths from the root note, is actually they are in very close proximity. So you realize that it's actually very hard to play with your 3 and a 1 on the left hand and 3 and a 5 on the right hand. So it'll be a very awkward and it'll be very hard to play. So in these cases, we actually use the alternate finger positioning, which is 5, 3, 2, and 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 4 for your right hand. Okay, so what about chords? So let's recap a little. Chords basically are made up of 3 or more notes played together at the same time. So this is actually a chord. This is also a chord. This is also a chord. So all these are actually chords. So they come in a lot of variety, and it's actually difficult to come up with a one-size-fits-all kind of fingering pattern to fit all of them. And so some simple guides again. If you're playing a chord that actually spreads across an octave, so an octave basically means from this C, an octave from this C upwards actually will mean this C. So actually, if we are playing across a certain octave, the fingers that we usually use will be the 1, 2, 3, 5 for the right hand, 1, 2, 3, 5, and for the left hand will be a 5, 3, 2, 1, 5, 3, 2, 1. Just that actually you see a triad in play. Instead of you playing 1, 5, 3, 1, you play a 5, 3, 2, and a 1. So these are some tips as to how to play chords that spread across an octave. Okay, it gives you a good range of motion and spacing in between the different notes in this chord as well. So moving on, I think the best tip I can leave for you will be that you just have to let your fingers rest naturally on the chords that you actually want to play, and then you will find actually the best fingerings that will fit for the chord without feeling the need to overstretch your fingers. So maybe in this example, you see that this C is comfortable to play like that. Let's say if I change, let me change my right hand, my third finger, with the fourth finger, you realize it's actually very hard to play. It's very uncomfortable. Yeah. So in such scenarios, you actually realize that by some form of practice and some form of experimentation, you actually find the fingerings that will actually make the chord the best for you to play comfortably as well. Okay. So another consideration you want to think about when you're finding out about fingerings is also to ensure that you can change to the next chord smoothly from that fingering. So let's say we will do that 1, 2, 3, 5 again. So let's say we are gonna change to a A minor shape. So A minor is actually like that. So you got to find out whether this fingering position actually makes it comfortable for you to change to the next one. And actually in this case it does, because you look at this fingering, and to move to a minor, all I need to do is to move down my pinky from the high C to a A. So in these cases, you realize that actually you found the best way to change lah. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to the next segment, which is actually what we call chord inversions. So now that you have learned all the basic chords, we also come to realize that there are many ways of playing the C chord. Just like just now I showed you how to play the C chord. You can play it like that, but you can play the C chord like that. So there are actually many ways as to how you can play a C chord. And what I just did are what we call chord inversions. So basically chord inversions are the same chord. So in the C major chord, there's C, E, G, and actually just by taking away the C and putting it behind at a higher range, actually what you achieve is an inversion, a chord inversion, and this is what we call the first inversion. Right. So the normal one that we always play in triad is actually what we call a root position. So this is the normal one, what we call in the root position, and in the first inversion, this is what we call this is actually we call this a C over E. Why? Because it's still a C chord. You can still see the C chord inside, but we change the root to a E. So E must be the last and the bass note in this chord. So this is a C root position, and in its first inversion, we call this C over E. And in the next inversion, you realize that after C, G, E, there's E, G, C, and the last one also is the G, C, E. Right. So in this is what we call the second inversion. Okay. So you realize that there are actually different fingerings used here as well. No longer do I use a 1, 3, 5 in this context as for the left hand. Well, it actually still fits for my right hand. So in terms of all this, actually there are no hard and fast rules in being able to find the right fingerings. But just like the tip that I've given you, just naturally just rest your fingers on the keys that you want to play, and you will naturally find the best fingerings that will fit. So I think as you practice more and you play these chords in different inversions, you actually become more proficient and smoother when it comes to changing chords as well. Yeah. Well, since we have already covered about scales, basic chords, triads, and fingerings, and even chord inversions, we're gonna move into this, introduce to you this concept called the family chords. And ever wonder what to play after a song ends, and how people know what to play during improvisation? Like let's say I just give you a chord. And you realize that I'm just playing a chord, but then there are many notes that fall within that particular few chords, and how do I know what chord works? How do I know what note works? That kind of thing. So this is the whole idea of family chords, where all these chords actually revolve around a certain key. So this is also where the concept of scales come in, like where you see that in these scales you realize that actually there's this root note that where this whole set of scales belong in, which is actually in C. And so this is where you'll see all these things theories start to come in together, and every note in this scale actually every note in these scales actually make up a chord that belongs to the same family in that key lah. So let me demonstrate with some examples for you to start off. So let's say we're gonna start for simplicity, let's gonna start with the key of C again, and I'm gonna do sort of a progression in C lah, so you hear for yourself also. So in C we realize that there are the C, the D, the E, F, G, A, B, C, right? So every note can actually make up a certain chord, right? So the first note probably is C. This is a C major chord. The second note with a D, we will play a D minor. The third note actually the E minor. Fourth note is a F. Fifth note will be a G major. Sixth one will be a A minor. The seventh will be what we call a B diminished. And the last one will be back to the C again. So I'll play it faster for you to hear. So it's a C, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, sorry, B diminished, followed by a C major. So you realize that all these chords actually fall under the same key. Because when I hit back to the C, it actually sounds correct. It just sounds like it resolved and it come to an end, right? So this is the whole idea of family chords, where all these chords actually belong to the C. So just give you some examples and you will get a better understanding as well. So probably gonna give you this. This is where you hit the root. And this point of time you will feel that you are at home. You have reached the end already, because this is what we call the home note. This is what we call the root note, which is the key of C. Right. So you realize that all these chords that are used previously actually they belong to this particular key, which is the key of C, and this is what we call family chords lah. So also let me just break it down for you in case it's get a bit complicated. That every key has actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 notes back to the 8th note, which is the high octave, right? So you realize that in the second note, which is the D minor, the third note E, and the 6th note are minor chords that you're playing. So you'll play a D minor, E minor, and an A minor here. So these are the three notes that actually you have to play in a minor key, minor chords, sorry, in this key of C. So whereas in the 7th note, you realize that we play a diminished. So diminished is actually a special chord. It's a different chord because of the different intervals between the chord. But I think a basic trick to remember what chords to play is actually going back to your scales again. So that's what I've covered in lesson 1, that in the key of C, actually the scales that you're doing is actually just all the white keys: C, E, C, D, sorry, E, F, G, A, B, C. So you realize that all my chords will have to fall in the white keys. So even when I play a D, I will not play a F sharp. So F sharp will be out of this key, which is the key of C. So it's the same way I play an E, I will not play an E major, I'll play an E minor instead. So that's also one easy way to familiarize yourself and also get you used to what chords to play within that key as well. So I'm just gonna play a short walk down progression from the C to back to the C again. So for you to hear and see how these chords actually come together and work. Right. So you can see from here that I'm just doing a walk down from the C to the B, A, G, F, E, D, G, and back to the C. Right. So you realize that actually when I do this, I'm just following through the triads. Right. So actually there's nothing, it's not very difficult, and actually just by doing this simple walk down, that you can actually play different songs with it as well. So what you realize that when I do this pattern is that I don't play triads on both hands. I don't do. So the reason behind this is actually simple. That if you realize that if you play your triad chords in a bass, it will sound very muddy. Right? It sounds very it doesn't sound very nice. Whereas you play 3 notes together in a higher octave, actually sounds quite nice. So I think this example just to show you that usually in keyboard playing we will avoid playing bass notes very close to each other. So you realize that in my left hand, usually I'll play an octave apart, while this for my left hand, and for my right hand I tend to play a bit closer. So this is also a tip for you, especially when you're new to keyboard playing, that we tend not to play too many notes, especially in our left hands in the bass area, and we keep more notes on the right hand on the upper areas. So actually you create a chord that sounds balanced and also not too muddy. Right. So now apart from just playing a walk down progression like that, realize that it's very very chord by chord, and it's just a walking down, and you realize that it doesn't really fit very nicely into this progression. And just let me show you another example that actually you can make the chord sound better just by changing a few chords within there, by including inversions that I've taught just in the earlier part of this lesson. So some chords that we're gonna change, instead of playing the B diminished, I'm gonna change it to a G over B. So basically what it involves is actually changing the F to a G. Right? So instead of playing a B, D, F, I'll play a B, D, G. Right? So this is a G over B. Why? Because you can see the G shape, the G, B, D inside, and with the bass note and on the B. So this is what we call a G over B. So that's the first chord we're gonna change. The second chord we're gonna change will be the E minor. So instead of playing E minor, we're gonna change it to a C over E. Okay. So same thing again. We're just gonna change the B to a C. So it's gonna be a move up. So let me put these two chords to replace the B diminished and the E minor in the same chord progression. And hear the difference, right? Okay. So it goes like this. Yeah. So I hope you can hear that there's some difference because the chords seem to sound a bit better, sound a bit nicer. You realize I took out all these and all these very minorish, very sad sounding chords, and I replace it with something lighter. So this is what the inversions actually do when I replace very harsh sounding chords with something lighter, which is by using inversions. Right. So these are certain tips that you can use to make chords sound better, sound more cheerful, more happy as well. So that's the second tip that I have for you, which is using inversions and changing your chords. I think the third tip for you is also learning to use inversions on your right hand. So that will be fixing your right hand within a certain range. So just now you see that I will follow through. Right, you see that my right hand actually follows through all the triads. So now instead of doing that, I'm gonna use my right hand. I'm gonna make it fixed into this small little range, and you see how I change my chords. So I'm gonna play it really slowly for you all to see and understand. And I'm gonna use inversions on my right hand so you can focus more on the right hand. I'm gonna do the same progression for my left hand. It's gonna be a downward, right? So just focus on my right hand. You see the changes, right? So from a C to the B, or G over B, sorry, and to the A minor. Right? So I don't play this A minor, I follow this A minor, G, F, C over E, D minor, G. So I play it faster for you to hear this time, just hear it. So I think you can hear from here, you can hear that there's some sort of difference in terms of I don't follow through all the notes, but there's more, it's smoother in terms of the chords changes, like moving from chord to chord. And there's some sort of flow and it's not disruptive, it's not very segmented into different parts as well. So I think these are certain tips you can use, especially in your playing, to find the chords that fit. So this is one progression, the downward progression, which is just starting from the 1 all the way down and going back to the 1 again. So just demonstrate with another progression, which is what we call C major to the A minor to the F to the G. So normally people will just play it like very straight, like A minor, F, G. So realize that it actually sounds very segmented, right? Like it's just very one chord by one block by one block, and there's no flow in the progression. So let me just show you how you can use whatever I taught you and make these 4 chords sound better together, right? So go. A minor, F. So you probably realize that I always keep these 3 notes C, E, G somewhat constant throughout the whole progression while I shift my bass. And only until the G, then I changed it to a B, D, G. Back to the C again. Right. So these are different tips that you all can use in terms of playing, changing the inversions of your fingers, not having to play everything in its root. Like you can also play in the first inversion, right? And yeah, and these are some tips that you can use to help you make these progressions and these chords sound more together and sound better as well. And yeah, so I think in the next lesson I'm gonna share with you, you probably have seen how I use certain notes that don't belong to the same chord. Like you probably see the A minor. I'll play my A minor with this G note which doesn't belong to it, right? And also you see my F with this G note that doesn't fall also within the F chord. Right. So in the next lesson, I'll share with you more about how to add this kind of special notes to make your chords sound nicer, and also to make it sound more together as well. So stay tuned to the next lesson, and hope this lesson has been helpful for you.